I'm a 30-year-old guy, and this is my story about my relationship with my sister Lisa, who is 32. For as long as I can remember, we've had a complicated dynamic, one that was once filled with shared laughter but has since turned into something much more strained. Growing up, Lisa and I were the kind of siblings who shared everything, from our toys to our secrets. We laughed together, played pranks on each other, and had each other's backs. But as we entered our teenage years, everything changed. Lisa became the golden child, the one who excelled at school and gained the admiration of everyone around her. She got into a prestigious university and landed a high-paying job in corporate finance right out of college. While I was trying to carve my path in the arts, struggling to make a name for myself as a graphic designer, Lisa seemed to effortlessly climb the corporate ladder, flaunting her six-figure salary at family gatherings. It didn't take long for the sibling rivalry to become painfully evident. Family dinners became a battleground of sorts. Lisa had a knack for making me feel small. She would drop casual remarks that stung, like, "When will you get a real job?" Or, "Oh, you're still doing that graphic design thing? How cute." Each jab was a reminder of how differently our lives had turned out. While I was passionate about my work, pouring my heart and soul into my fledgling business, she acted as if my career was nothing more than a hobby. The laughter that once bonded us faded, replaced by tension and resentment. Despite the rough start, my graphic design business began to take off. After years of uncertainty and struggle, I landed a few viral projects that opened doors to new clients. It felt surreal. What once seemed like a distant dream was now becoming my reality. I finally had something to be proud of. With my newfound success, I started to stand up for myself. I would respond to Lisa's snide remarks, letting her know that success comes in many forms. My confidence grew, and I felt a sense of validation that I had longed for. As my business thrived, our parents began to notice. They had always been neutral in our sibling rivalry, but now they couldn't ignore my achievements. They praised my dedication and hard work, and for the first time, I felt seen. It was refreshing to receive support, but it only seemed to deepen Lisa's resentment. Things took a drastic turn when Lisa's company faced massive layoffs. It was shocking news, and she tried to play it off as if it didn't affect her, but it was evident she was shaken. The next family dinner was particularly tense. While I tried to keep the mood light, Lisa snapped whenever someone mentioned jobs or careers. The pressure hung heavy in the air, and I could see how much she was struggling. Later, our parents pulled me aside, their expressions serious. They informed me that Lisa was having a tough time financially, living off her savings, and desperately looking for work. A part of me felt sympathy, but another part couldn't shake the memories of her mocking my choices. How could the sister who once belittled my career now be the one asking for help? Then came the unexpected call from Lisa. It was a rarity for us to communicate outside of family events, so when my phone buzzed with her name, I hesitated before answering. The conversation started with small talk, the kind of awkward pleasantries that barely masked the tension beneath. Then, she shifted the conversation, asking if I had any open positions at my company. The implications of her words hung heavily in the air. The sister who had made me feel worthless for years was now asking for a job. I was stunned. It felt surreal, like a plot twist in a movie. I stammered that I'd think about it, needing time to process the sudden shift. A flood of mixed emotions washed over me, resentment, disbelief, and a tinge of compassion. Would helping her mend our broken relationship, or was it a recipe for disaster? As I hung up, I was left grappling with my thoughts. Could I truly offer her a position after everything she'd said and done? There was a chance to help her, but at what cost to my own well-being? I knew the stakes were high. My business had finally started to thrive, and I didn't want to jeopardize that. But family is complicated, and in that moment, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was a chance to turn the page on our tumultuous relationship. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a series of events that would test our family ties, forcing us to confront the past and redefine our connection. What would happen next? Only time would tell. With uncertainty looming, I braced myself for what was to come. Would I extend a lifeline to my sister, or would the scars of our past prove too deep to bridge? The answers lay ahead, and I could only hope for a resolution that brought us closer rather than tearing us apart even more. Update 1. After that unexpected call from Lisa, the weight of my decision pressed down heavily. The next morning, I sat at my desk, coffee in hand, staring at my laptop screen. I needed to talk to someone about this bizarre turn of events. So, I decided to make a Reddit post detailing my predicament. Am I wrong for considering hiring my sister? I typed, sharing the backstory of our complicated relationship and how Lisa had spent years belittling my career choices. The responses came flooding in almost immediately. It was incredible how quickly the post gained traction. Some users supported the idea of giving Lisa a chance, emphasizing family bonds and the potential for reconciliation. Others reminded me of the years of mockery, advising me to stand firm and not let her manipulate my goodwill. The comments were mixed, sparking a heated discussion that made me think deeply about my next steps. As the day went on, Lisa sent me multiple follow-up texts. Each message became increasingly insistent, highlighting how her skills in corporate finance could bring a new level of professionalism to my company. I could almost hear the desperation in her words. She seemed determined to convince me that this could be a beneficial arrangement for both of us. My girlfriend, who had been observing the whole situation unfold, sat down with me that evening. At 28, she had a level-headed perspective and always knew how to navigate tricky family dynamics. She supported the idea of helping Lisa, but warned me to establish clear boundaries if I decided to hire her. "You need to be firm, or it could backfire," she said, her eyes serious. This struck a chord. I realized that if I brought Lisa into my business, I would have to ensure that our personal history didn't taint our professional relationship. Memories of Lisa's past insults bubbled to the surface. She had called my business a cute little Etsy store and laughed about my hobby job at family dinners. Those moments replayed in my mind, each one fueling my hesitation. It was hard to forget the times she made me feel small, as if my passion was a mere joke. Amidst all this turmoil, my business was gaining momentum. A major client had recently come on board, which meant my workload was increasing. It was the perfect excuse to consider hiring help. The practicality of the situation started to make sense. If I hired Lisa, I could relieve some of my stress while providing her a lifeline during her tough times. Conversations with my parents also played a significant role. They reached out, urging me to consider Lisa's request seriously. Family is everything, they said, emphasizing the importance of supporting one another in hard times. Their words struck a nerve, highlighting the ongoing struggle between loyalty and self-respect. Despite the logical reasons to bring Lisa onto my team, the emotional weight lingered. It was difficult to welcome someone who had spent years belittling my choices, but the thought of her suffering alone and the potential for mending our relationship kept tugging at me. A few days later, I decided to set up a meeting with Lisa. The idea was to discuss her qualifications and the role she would play in the company. I hoped to keep it professional, but I knew the tension would be palpable. The meeting took place in my small office, which was buzzing with the energy of my ongoing projects. Lisa arrived, her demeanor a mix of nervousness and determination. She started to present her qualifications, downplaying her past criticisms. She talked about her experience in managing teams and budgets, her words flowing with the same confidence that once irritated me. But I couldn't shake the nagging doubt in my mind. Was she genuinely interested in contributing, or was this just a desperate attempt to salvage her career? Then came her half-hearted apology. I know I might have been a bit harsh before, but we're family, right? She said, brushing aside the years of tension between us. It felt insincere, as if she was trying to gloss over the past without taking full responsibility for her actions. The old wounds flared up, and I struggled to maintain my composure. After weighing the pros and cons in my mind, I finally decided to offer her a temporary position with a 3-month probation period. I made it clear that this was purely a business decision, not a family favor. Her reaction was immediate. Lisa's face shifted, and it was evident she was displeased with the condition, but she agreed, saying she would prove me wrong. As I wrapped up our meeting, I felt a mix of apprehension and hope. I updated my Reddit post, sharing the outcome of my discussion with Lisa and asking for feedback. I offered her the job with a probation period. Am I being too harsh, or is this just practical? Once again, the responses poured in. Some users praised my decision to set boundaries while giving Lisa a chance, while others warned me about the potential fallout. The roller coaster of emotions and advice from strangers left me feeling both supported and conflicted. So there it was, I had taken a leap of faith, offering my sister a lifeline after years of estrangement. Would this decision lead to a fresh start, or would it deepen the rift between us? Only time would tell, and I braced myself for the uncertain road ahead. Update 2. The first day Lisa joined the company was a mix of excitement and apprehension. She arrived early, dressed in business attire that felt a bit out of place in our laid-back office. The atmosphere was usually casual, with employees dressed in jeans and t-shirts, so it was clear she was trying to assert herself right from the start. Lisa was assigned to manage client communications and project schedules, a role that could greatly benefit from her corporate background. However, it didn't take long for the initial enthusiasm to wane. Lisa struggled to adjust to the informal work environment, often making comments about how things were different in corporate. Her insistence on maintaining a strict, formal approach quickly clashed with the culture I had nurtured. The team had built a bond over the years, fostering a collaborative and relaxed atmosphere that encouraged creativity. Lisa's arrival disrupted that balance. Tensions began to rise almost immediately. Lisa attempted to assert her authority, trying to implement her own way of doing things. The existing staff, a tight-knit group who had worked together for a while, began to feel frustrated. Lisa's micromanagement became a hot topic of conversation around the office. Young employees who were used to autonomy found themselves stifled. They would come to me with complaints about her overbearing style, seeking reassurance and support. In response to the mounting issues, Lisa pulled me aside multiple times to voice her complaints. She suggested that we should up our standards and that her corporate experience could help us improve. It felt like a constant tug of war between her corporate mentality and the creative culture of my business. Each conversation left me feeling drained, as I found myself mediating between Lisa and the team instead of managing my business effectively. As days turned into weeks, the pressure escalated. The team's dissatisfaction grew louder. They felt unheard, caught in the crossfire between Lisa's corporate rigidity and their desire for a creative environment. The tension became palpable. Laughter that once filled the office was replaced with whispers and side glances. Then came the moment that pushed everything over the edge. One of our key clients expressed concerns about Lisa's approach. They felt her style was too rigid, making them uncomfortable during the creative process. It was a wake-up call. I had to confront Lisa about the mounting issues. I scheduled a tough conversation, determined to address the situation directly. During our meeting, I laid it out clearly. If she couldn't adapt to the company culture, the probation period would not end favorably. The words hung heavy in the air, and Lisa's reaction was immediate. She resisted, accusing me of bias and letting personal feelings interfere with business decisions. Her defensiveness only fueled my frustration. It was hard to remain neutral when her presence was causing so much unrest. As the days went by, I couldn't shake the feeling that I might have made a mistake by hiring her. She had always been a part of my life, but working together brought a new level of complexity. I felt torn between wanting to help my sister and maintaining the harmony of my team. The situation worsened as the team's resentment towards Lisa grew. The once collaborative environment began to feel toxic. Employees started to voice their dissatisfaction openly, making it harder for me to maintain a peaceful workplace. Every meeting felt like walking on eggshells. One particularly heated team meeting spiraled out of control. Lisa snapped, accusing me of holding a grudge against her. Old family drama came spilling out as she brought up our history, making the atmosphere even more charged. The team was caught off guard, and tensions reached a boiling point. I retaliated, reminding her that she was the one who had never believed in my business. I said it plainly, "You were the one who thought my career was a joke, and now you expect a handout?" The words echoed in the silence that followed, and the room felt thick with unspoken tension. After that explosive moment, Lisa approached me privately to apologize. This time, her apology felt more genuine. She admitted she was struggling to adjust to her new reality and expressed a desire to improve. While part of me wanted to believe her, a lingering doubt remained. Would this change be lasting, or was it just a temporary reaction to the fallout? With everything unfolding, I turned to Reddit for advice once more. I shared the latest events, detailing the growing tensions in the workplace and Lisa's emotional outburst during the meeting. I asked the community if I should extend her probation or end it for the sake of the team's morale. The responses began pouring in, ranging from support for maintaining boundaries to urging compassion and understanding. Each response added to my confusion. It was clear that the road ahead was fraught with challenges. Lisa was my sister, and I wanted to support her. Yet my responsibility as a manager and my commitment to my team weighed heavily on my shoulders. As I sat there reading through the comments, I realized that I needed to take a step back and reevaluate the situation. The balance between family and business was proving to be more complex than I had ever anticipated. Would I find a way to help Lisa while preserving the integrity of my company, or was this relationship destined to fracture under the weight of expectations? The next steps loomed ahead, and I knew I had to tread carefully. Update 3. With just a few weeks left in Lisa's probation period, the atmosphere in the office felt increasingly strained. I was preparing for her performance review, a decision that loomed over me like a dark cloud. The tension was palpable. Lisa had been working longer hours, throwing herself into tasks, and taking on additional responsibilities, but her attitude remained rigid and unyielding. It was clear that she was trying to prove herself, but her approach was far from effective. As the days passed, I noticed a change in Lisa. She became more desperate to make an impression. Her long hours didn't translate into positive interactions with the team. Instead, her need for control led to more friction. The small staff that had previously thrived on collaboration now felt suffocated by her insistence on doing things her way. One afternoon, while working late to finish up some projects, I overheard a private phone call Lisa was having in her office. The conversation revealed a troubling truth. She was discussing her dwindling savings and struggling to pay her rent. The worry in her voice struck a chord. Knowing she was facing such dire circumstances complicated my feelings. A sense of conflict settled in, realizing the stakes were high for her. After that call, Lisa approached me privately. She wanted me to understand her difficult adjustment to this new role and insisted that she was trying her best. I could see the strain on her face, but the pressure in the office was undeniable. The challenge was finding a balance between compassion for my sister and the needs of my business. Meanwhile, my team was becoming increasingly vocal about their dissatisfaction with Lisa's presence. 2 key employees came to me, expressing their concerns. They made it clear that they would leave if Lisa stayed, citing the stressful environment she had created. It was a sobering moment. I realized the gravity of the situation. I needed to prioritize the well-being of my company, but I was also faced with the heart-wrenching possibility of losing my sister. The confrontation I had been avoiding finally became necessary. I called Lisa into my office for a direct conversation. I explained that her behavior was pushing the team away, and I couldn't ignore the rising discontent. The reality of the situation hit hard. She needed to adapt to our culture or risk losing her job. Lisa's response was unexpected. For the first time, she broke down in front of me. Tears streamed down her face as she admitted that she felt like a failure after losing her previous job. She was overwhelmed and didn't know how to start over. It was a vulnerable moment that made me reconsider my stance. Seeing her in such a state softened my resolve, but I also knew the implications of my decision would affect the entire team. As I weighed my options, family pressure began to mount. Our parents called me, pleading for compassion. They urged me to be there for Lisa during this difficult time. Their emotional appeals only complicated my dilemma further. I felt the weight of family loyalty and the expectation to support my sister, but the integrity of my business was at stake. My girlfriend, having observed the turmoil, offered her perspective. She cautioned me not to let family guilt influence my decision. She reminded me of the hard work I had put into building my business and how important it was to protect it. Her support grounded me, but the pressure from my parents continued to swirl in my mind. As the review date approached, the reality of the situation began to solidify. I had to make a choice. Ultimately, I decided to let Lisa go. It was not an easy decision. I offered to support her in her job search and helped her connect with potential employers outside of my company. It felt like the right thing to do for the sake of my team, but it also broke my heart to think about my sister's pain. When I told Lisa, her reaction was a mixture of shock and sorrow. She looked visibly crushed, the color draining from her face. There were no harsh words, no accusations, just a quiet understanding that this was how it had to be. She gathered her things from the office in silence, and I could see the hurt in her eyes. It was a painful farewell, one that I never wanted to make, yet felt was necessary. The next family gathering was laden with tension. As we sat around the dinner table, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken words. Lisa barely spoke, her silence echoing the hurt. Our parents shot disappointed looks in my direction, their disappointment palpable. The warmth of family gatherings had vanished, replaced by an uncomfortable heaviness. After the dinner, I turned to Reddit once again to share my tough decision. I detailed the fallout with my family, the heartbreak of letting Lisa go, and the challenge of maintaining my business. I asked the community if I had handled the situation the right way, or if I should have given her another chance. The responses began to roll in, filled with empathy and stories of similar family struggles. As I read through the comments, I knew that I had a long road ahead. The fractures in my family were deep, and I could only hope that in time, healing would come. The world of family, work, and loyalty was complex, and this chapter of our story was far from over. Would there be a way to mend the broken pieces, or were we destined to remain distant, each caught in our separate struggles? Only time would tell as I braced myself for what lay ahead. Update 4. In the weeks following Lisa's departure, silence hung in the air like a thick fog. She stopped responding to calls and texts, leaving me with a mix of guilt and relief. Each day that passed without hearing from her added weight to the already heavy burden I carried. The decision to let her go felt like it was carved into stone, unchangeable and permanent. Meanwhile, family dynamics took a sharp turn. Our parents openly blamed me for Lisa's continued unemployment. During our family calls, they expressed disappointment and frustration. They accused me of being heartless, claiming I prioritized business over family. Their words stung. I had hoped they would understand my decision, but instead it felt like I was being cast as the villain in this story. The weight of their judgment pressed down on me, making me second-guess everything. As time went on, self-doubt crept in. I started to wonder if I had been too harsh in my decision. Maybe I should have made more of an effort to help Lisa adjust to the workplace. Each missed call and unanswered message seemed to echo that uncertainty. Was I too focused on my business, ignoring the bond we once had? These questions lingered, gnawing at my conscience. The most recent update on Reddit had garnered a flood of responses. Many users supported my decision, sharing their own experiences with toxic family dynamics. They understood the necessity of setting boundaries, especially in a professional environment. However, a vocal minority criticized me for abandoning family. Those comments stung the most. I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe they were right. I learned through mutual acquaintances that Lisa was struggling to find work. She had gone on several interviews, but none had turned into job offers. Hearing this added another layer of guilt. I thought about her sitting in those interview rooms, presenting her best self while secretly battling her insecurities. The image stuck with me, making it harder to reconcile the decision I had made. In an attempt to mend our relationship, I reached out to Lisa. I invited her for coffee, hoping to create a space where we could talk things through. To my surprise, she agreed. The day arrived, and I waited nervously at the cafe. When she walked in, it was clear that the past weeks had taken their toll on her. She looked worn out, a shadow of the confident woman I had known. Our conversation started off tense. We both danced around the hurt feelings and misunderstandings that had built up over the years. But as the coffee cups emptied, the walls began to crack. Lisa eventually opened up about how difficult the job market had been for her. She talked about feeling like she had been knocked off her pedestal. It was clear she was not just angry with me, but was frustrated with herself and the situation she found herself in. In that moment of honesty, I felt a rush of empathy. I acknowledged that I could have been more patient with her during her transition into my company. I apologized for not being more understanding of her struggles. This admission opened a small window of vulnerability between us. Lisa's response was mixed. She admitted that she might have been overly critical of my career in the past, but she stopped short of offering a full apology, her pride still holding her back. It was a step forward, but not quite the resolution I had hoped for. Seeing her still struggling, I offered to refer her to a colleague's company that was hiring. I emphasized that I genuinely wanted to see her succeed and that this was an opportunity to start fresh. At first, Lisa hesitated, questioning whether it was out of pity. After some convincing, she agreed to accept the help. It was a breakthrough, but I sensed the struggle within her. When I told my parents about the coffee meeting and the referral offer, their reception was colder than I had anticipated. They accused me of only stepping in after Lisa had hit rock bottom. Their disappointment stung, but I held my ground. I knew I had to do something to support her, even if they didn't understand my reasoning. Throughout all of this, my girlfriend remained a steady source of support. She reassured me that I had done what I could, encouraging me to focus on the future instead of dwelling on past conflicts. Her encouragement reminded me that I wasn't alone in this battle. After a few days, I decided to update Reddit on the tentative progress with Lisa. I shared how our conversation had opened a door for potential healing, even though things were still rocky. I admitted that I was hopeful we might be on the path to rebuilding our relationship, but it would take time. As I read through the comments on my update, I felt a sense of cautious optimism. Many users recognized the complexity of family dynamics and offered words of encouragement. It became clear that while the road ahead would be challenging, there was potential for reconciliation. The journey had taken many twists and turns, and I was still uncertain about what the future held. But for the first time in a while, there was a flicker of hope. I hoped that with time, understanding, and effort, we could mend the fractures that had formed between us. Only time would tell if we could navigate this difficult terrain and emerge stronger together. Update 5. A few weeks after my heart-to-heart with Lisa, the phone rang. It was her, and I could feel a rush of anticipation as I answered. Lisa was calling to share the news. She landed a job through my referral. Her voice brimmed with excitement, and she expressed gratitude for the opportunity. However, it didn't take long for the awkwardness to seep back into our conversation. While she was thrilled about her new position, the tension between us lingered, and our relationship felt distant. As Lisa settled into her new role, family gatherings became increasingly uncomfortable. Our parents remained subtly critical of me, often referencing Lisa's job as if it were a reflection of my actions. They would drop comments about how much worse things could have been if I hadn't stepped in. It was clear that they still blamed me for the fallout, even as Lisa's life began to stabilize. The tension at the dinner table was thick enough to cut with a knife, filled with unspoken words and awkward silences. Over the next few months, a surprising transformation began to take shape in Lisa. She became less critical and more understanding of different career paths, including mine. It was almost as if the experiences she had endured had humbled her. She started asking about my business in a genuine way, showing interest in the projects I was working on. It was a refreshing change, and I found myself cautiously optimistic. One day, Lisa reached out and invited me to lunch. This was a significant shift. It was the first time she had taken the initiative to connect outside of family obligations. I accepted, eager yet wary of what the meeting might bring. When we met, the atmosphere was different from our previous encounters. Lisa seemed more relaxed, ready to talk about not just work, but life in general. During lunch, she opened up about her experiences in the job market. She acknowledged that she had taken her previous success for granted and expressed a more sincere understanding of my struggles. Her apology felt more genuine than it had in the past. She was not just apologizing for her past behavior, but also recognizing the complexity of our individual paths. Accepting her apology felt right, yet I remained guarded. This newfound humility was a positive step, but I wondered if it was truly genuine or just a temporary shift brought on by her recent challenges. It felt risky to fully trust this change in her attitude. As our conversation continued, Lisa proposed a collaboration between her new company and mine. She spoke enthusiastically about the potential benefits for both sides, framing it as a way to make up for the past. The idea had merit, but I hesitated. Mixing business with our still fragile relationship could easily backfire. I needed to think carefully before agreeing to anything. Later that day, I shared the latest developments on Reddit, seeking advice from the community. Many users echoed my concerns about maintaining boundaries while also recognizing the opportunity for growth. The responses ranged from encouragement to caution, with some reminding me to prioritize my well-being over familial obligations. My girlfriend chimed in with her thoughts, reminding me that trust takes time to rebuild. She suggested that I proceed with caution, emphasizing the importance of keeping professional and personal matters separate. Her perspective grounded me and helped me focus on the potential risks involved in the collaboration. As time passed, Lisa's newfound support became evident during family conversations. She started defending my work when our parents criticized my career choices, subtly challenging their views. It was a welcome change and demonstrated that she was willing to stand by me. I could see our parents begin to soften, reassessing their perceptions of both Lisa and me. Yet, despite this progress, the underlying tension still lingered. As the idea of collaboration began to take shape, I carefully considered the risks involved. After much thought, I decided to take a leap of faith and agreed to a small collaborative project with Lisa's company. It was a test to see how well we could work together. The project kicked off with cautious optimism, and I focused on keeping communication clear and professional. The project unfolded smoothly. Both teams collaborated effectively, leading to a successful outcome that exceeded our expectations. The positive results opened up new opportunities for both companies and helped strengthen the tentative truce between Lisa and me. With the project complete, I felt a sense of relief. The collaboration had proven that we could work together successfully, laying a foundation for future endeavors. I decided to share this update on Reddit, highlighting how things weren't perfect, but we had made significant progress as a family. As the comments rolled in, the community was supportive, offering congratulations on the successful project and acknowledging the steps I had taken towards rebuilding my relationship with Lisa. While the road ahead remained uncertain, I felt hopeful that we could continue to move forward. Looking back at everything that had transpired, it was clear that our journey was far from over. The complexities of family dynamics and personal ambitions were woven together in a tapestry of both challenges and growth. I remained cautiously optimistic, knowing that with time and effort, we could build a stronger bond and a brighter future together. Only time would tell if we could sustain this momentum and truly heal the wounds of our past. I'm a 29-year-old guy, and I work a pretty demanding job that requires me to travel a few times a year. It's not glamorous, it's mostly long hours, back-to-back meetings, and airports, but it pays well, and I've managed to carve out a decent life for myself. A big part of that life is my dog, Luna. She's a 4-year-old rescue, a mixed breed with floppy ears and a tail that never stops wagging. I adopted her during one of the lowest points in my life, and she pulled me through it. She's not just a dog to me, she's family. Right now, my younger sister Claire is staying with me. She's 26 and going through a rough patch after breaking up with her boyfriend. She needed a place to crash for a while, and I figured it wouldn't hurt to help her out. But Claire and we've never been super close. She's the kind of person who likes things her way, and she's always been vocal about how much she dislikes dogs. She claims she's allergic, but I've never seen her have an actual reaction. Mostly, she just complains about the hair and the barking. Luna, for her part, has been her usual sweet self, But Claire doesn't make it easy. Every day, it's something new: the fur on the couch, the water bowl she tripped over, or how she can't relax with Luna around. I've tried to be patient, but it's wearing thin. It's not like I asked Claire to love Luna, but basic tolerance doesn't feel like too much to ask. A couple of weeks ago, I told Claire I had a work trip coming up. It's a week-long thing, and I couldn't take Luna with me. Normally, I'd board her, but the good places book up fast, and I didn't plan far enough ahead. I asked Claire if she could watch Luna while I was gone. To my surprise, she said yes, though not without rolling her eyes and muttering about how I owe her one. Just to cover my bases, I let my friend Nick know what was up. Nick's great with dogs, and he lives nearby. I told Claire that if it ever got too much, she could call him, and he'd step in. Before I left, I made sure everything was ready. I stocked up on Luna's food, printed out her feeding schedule, and went over every detail with Claire. I even reminded her about Nick, but she waved me off, saying she had it under control. Luna was her usual happy self as I hugged her goodbye and headed out the door. The first couple of days of the trip were fine. Claire sent a couple of short texts, things like Luna ate or took her for a walk. It wasn't much, but I figured no news was good news. Then, halfway through the week, Claire sent a text that stopped me cold. "You might be mad, but I think I did something good for you and Luna." I immediately tried calling her, but she didn't pick up. Instead, she texted back, "Busy right now. Can't talk." My stomach sank. Something was wrong, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was bad. I emailed my boss, rearranged a few meetings, and booked an earlier flight home. Whatever was going on, I needed to get back. When I walked into my house, it was too quiet. Normally, Luna would come bounding up to greet me, tail wagging like crazy. But there was no sign of her. Her bed was gone. Her toys were gone. Even her leash was missing from the hook by the door. Claire was sitting on the couch, scrolling on her phone like nothing was wrong. I asked her where Luna was, and she looked up with this casual expression, like we were talking about the weather. That's when she said it. She had rehomed Luna. She said Luna was too much work, and that she found a family who could take better care of her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I demanded to know who these people were, where they lived, and how I could get Luna back, but Claire refused to give me any details. She said they wanted to stay anonymous, and that I should be thanking her for doing the hard thing. I called my parents, hoping they'd talk some sense into her, but they took her side. My mom actually said she was just trying to help, and you should be grateful. Grateful? For losing my dog? I hung up on them before I said something I'd regret. I don't even know how to process this. Luna's gone, and the person I trusted to take care of her did this behind my back. I feel like I'm in a nightmare, and I have no idea how to wake up. The only thing I know for sure is that I need to find Luna and bring her home. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. Update 1. The first thing I did after Claire refused to give me any information was call Jake. As soon as I explained what happened, he was furious. He didn't even let me finish before saying he was on his way over. Within 20 minutes, he was at my place, pacing my living room, throwing out ideas on how we could track Luna down. Jake was the kind of guy who didn't just talk about helping, he jumped right in. His first suggestion was to start with local shelters and rescue groups. If Claire had dropped Luna off somewhere, there was a chance we could find her before she was adopted out. We started making calls that night. Jake took half the list, and I took the other. We explained the situation to every person we spoke to, how Luna was surrendered without my consent, and how desperate I was to get her back. Most of the people we talked to were sympathetic, but no one had seen a dog matching Luna's description. By the time we finished, it was nearly midnight, and we'd hit a dead end. The next morning, I decided to take things public. I posted about Luna on social media, attaching a few photos of her and a description of what happened. I kept it factual, avoiding any mention of Claire's name, but I didn't hold back on how much Luna meant to me. Within hours, the post started gaining traction. Friends shared it, and then their friends shared it. Soon, strangers were commenting, offering advice and support, but not everyone was on my side. A few hours after the post went live, my mom commented, calling me dramatic and saying that Claire had done what was best for Luna. My dad chimed in, suggesting that I should focus on my important job instead of stirring up family drama. Even Claire left a comment, accusing me of being irresponsible for traveling so much and claiming she was the only one who really cared about Luna's well-being. Their comments only made the post spread faster. People couldn't believe what was happening, and they started tagging animal advocacy groups and even local news outlets. That evening, a neighbor knocked on my door. She said she'd seen my post and thought she might have some information. A few days ago, she noticed a man she didn't recognize loading a dog into the back of an SUV. She didn't think much of it at the time, but now she realized the dog might have been Luna. She'd written down part of the license plate because the man had parked in front of her driveway, and she was annoyed about it. I took down the partial plate number and thanked her 100 times over. It wasn't much, but it was something. Jake suggested hiring a private investigator to track down the car. I wasn't sure if that was overkill, but at this point I didn't care. I called around and found someone who could start immediately. The PI warned me that it might take time, but I told him I'd pay whatever it took. Meanwhile, the tension with my family was reaching a boiling point. My parents called, furious that I'd taken the situation online. They accused me of embarrassing the family and said they'd cut off contact if I didn't drop this drama. I told them I didn't care. If they wanted to side with Claire, that was their choice, but I wasn't stopping until I got Luna back. The stress started bleeding into other parts of my life. I missed a couple of deadlines at work, which led to a meeting with my boss. He wasn't unsympathetic, but he made it clear that I needed to get my head back in the game. Afterward, I sat in my car for what felt like hours, wondering how everything had spiraled so far out of control. A few days later, the PI called with a lead. He'd traced the partial plate to a car registered in a neighboring state. The owner was linked to a rescue group known for taking in surrendered animals and rehoming them quickly. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was the most solid lead we'd had so far. I sent the information to Jake, who immediately started organizing a fundraiser to cover the growing costs of the investigation. The response was overwhelming. People donated, shared the link, and left messages of support. It was the first time I felt like I wasn't completely alone in this. I confronted Claire again, hoping the mention of a PI and legal action would scare her into cooperating. When I told her I was considering filing a police report for theft, she froze. For a second, I thought she might actually come clean, but then she doubled down, insisting she didn't know anything more. She said I was overreacting and stormed out of the room. That night, I got a message from a woman named Lisa. She said she'd seen my post and thought she might know where Luna was. She didn't give much detail, just that she'd recently adopted a dog matching Luna's description from a rescue group in the same state the PI had mentioned. My heart was racing as I typed out a reply, praying this was the break I needed. Update 2. The message from Lisa came late at night. She explained that she had recently adopted a dog matching Luna's description from a rescue group. She sounded cautious, mentioning she'd seen scams where people tried to reclaim pets fraudulently. To ease her concerns, I sent her photos of Luna and a copy of the adoption papers I'd signed when I first rescued her. After seeing the photos, Lisa agreed to meet in person. Nick and I left early the next morning for the drive to Lisa's house, which was in the next state. The hours crawled by. Nick kept the mood light, talking about everything except the possibility that this might not be Luna. When we finally arrived, Lisa was waiting outside with a dog by her side. As soon as I stepped out of the car, I knew it was Luna. She recognized me too, breaking free from Lisa and running straight into my arms. Her tail wagged so hard it looked like it might fall off. Lisa looked stunned, watching the reunion in silence. When Luna finally calmed down enough for us to talk, Lisa explained what had happened. She'd adopted Luna from a rescue group about a week ago. The group told her Luna had been surrendered by an owner who couldn't care for her anymore. Lisa had no reason to doubt the story. She'd adopted from them before and trusted their process. She showed me the paperwork she'd received, and there it was, Claire's name listed as Luna's owner. Lisa was horrified when I explained the situation. She apologized repeatedly, saying she never would have taken Luna if she'd known. I reassured her that she wasn't at fault, and thanked her for taking such good care of Luna in the meantime. Before we left, she gave me a copy of the documents she'd received from the rescue group, saying they might help if I decided to take legal action. When we got home, I contacted the rescue group directly. They confirmed that Claire had surrendered Luna and provided all the paperwork she'd filled out. In the forms, Claire had claimed she was Luna's owner and that she couldn't care for her anymore due to financial hardship. The group explained they had no way of knowing she wasn't telling the truth. They apologized for the situation and promised to review their processes to prevent something like this from happening again. With the documentation from the rescue group and Lisa, I decided it was time to consult a lawyer. I wanted to know if Claire's actions could be considered theft or fraud. The lawyer explained that because Claire had no legal claim to Luna, her actions might qualify as both. He suggested filing a police report as a first step, so I did. My parents, of course, were furious when they found out. They accused me of tearing the family apart over a dog and said I was being cruel to Claire. Meanwhile, Claire started playing the victim, sending me long, rambling texts. She alternated between apologizing and justifying what she'd done, claiming she only wanted what was best for Luna. At one point, she even accused me of blowing everything out of proportion to make her look bad. Online, the story kept gaining attention. People were overwhelmingly supportive, sharing similar stories of betrayal and encouraging me to stand my ground. Nick kept updating the fundraiser, which had started to gain traction as well. Some of the donations came with notes from strangers who thanked me for fighting for Luna, saying it gave them hope for their own situations. At work, my boss called me into another meeting. I was worried I was about to be reprimanded for being distracted, but instead he offered me some time off to deal with everything. He told me to take care of what mattered and come back when I was ready. It was a small gesture, but it felt like a lifeline. The next big blow-up came at a family meeting my parents insisted on. They said it was time to resolve things as adults. I walked in prepared to lay everything out, but it quickly devolved into chaos. My parents took Claire's side, insisting she acted out of love. When I brought up the police report and the legal consequences Claire might face, my mom started yelling, accusing me of ruining Claire's life. Claire, for her part, burst into tears, accusing me of being unforgiving and cruel. The meeting ended with me walking out. I told them I wasn't willing to forgive Claire without accountability, and if they couldn't respect that, I didn't need them in my life. That night, I blocked Claire and my parents on everything. Nick came over with takeout, and we spent the evening with Luna, who seemed to sense that things were finally settling down. A few days later, the rescue group called with an unexpected update. They'd received complaints about Claire before. Apparently, she had a history of lying about her situation to manipulate people into doing what she wanted. They didn't go into detail, but it confirmed what I'd started to realize. This wasn't just about Luna. Claire's behavior was part of a larger pattern, and I wasn't going to let her off the hook this time. Update 3. After consulting with my lawyer, I decided to move forward with a lawsuit against Claire for theft and emotional distress. Luna was more than a pet, she was family, and what Claire did wasn't just a mistake. It was deliberate and calculated. My lawyer filed the necessary paperwork, and within days, Claire was served. Shortly after the lawsuit was filed, I heard from the local police. They had started investigating Claire for surrendering Luna under false pretenses. The rescue group provided all the documentation Claire had filled out, including the forms where she claimed to be Luna's owner. The details made it clear that Claire had lied, and the police were taking it seriously. When Claire got wind of the investigation, she panicked. She showed up at my door, crying and begging me to drop everything. She claimed she didn't realize how serious it would get, and that she never meant to hurt me. I told her it was out of my hands now. The police were involved, and the lawsuit was moving forward. She left in tears, but I wasn't about to back down. My parents, on the other hand, were relentless. They ramped up the guilt tripping, calling me multiple times a day to say I was ruining Claire's life over a dog. They kept repeating that Claire had only tried to help and accusing me of being unforgiving. When I stopped answering their calls, they started leaving voicemails, threatening to cut me out of the family if I didn't drop the case. Out of nowhere, my older brother reached out. He's 30, married, and has always kept his distance from the family drama. He said he'd heard what was going on and wanted me to know he was on my side. He even offered to help with legal fees if I needed it. Hearing that gave me a boost I didn't know I needed. For the first time in years, I felt like someone in the family actually had my back. Meanwhile, Claire started spinning a new story. She told anyone who would listen that she only surrendered Luna because she thought I couldn't handle the responsibility of having a dog with my busy work schedule. She framed it like she had done me a favor, claiming she was looking out for Luna's best interests. But her narrative didn't hold up, especially after I shared more details in my Reddit updates. The posts went viral again, and the support was overwhelming. Strangers shared similar stories of betrayal by family members, and some even offered advice on handling the legal process. Nick kept the fundraiser updated, and donations kept coming in. Every time I read the supportive comments or messages, it reminded me why I was fighting so hard. Things took a turn when someone anonymously contacted Claire's employer about the legal case. I wasn't involved, but I found out through the grapevine that Claire's job had started an internal review. She wasn't fired, but she faced disciplinary action, which only made her angrier. She blamed me for ruining her reputation, even though I had nothing to do with it. The final straw for me came at another family meeting. My parents insisted on gathering everyone to resolve things. My brother showed up, which was a surprise since he usually avoids these meetings. As soon as it started, my parents launched into the same arguments, accusing me of tearing the family apart. Claire sat there quietly at first, but when I brought up the legal case and the police investigation, she exploded. She accused me of being petty and vindictive, saying I was doing all of this for attention. That's when my brother stepped in. He called out our parents for enabling Claire's behavior and pointed out how they'd always let her get away with everything. He reminded them of all the times Claire had caused problems and never faced any consequences. It was the first time I'd ever seen him lose his temper, and it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For once, someone else was saying what I'd been feeling for years. After the meeting, my parents tried to smooth things over by offering to pay me to drop the lawsuit. They said they'd cover my legal fees and even throw in extra as a gesture of goodwill. I refused. This wasn't about money, it was about accountability. In therapy later that week, I realized how much of my life I'd spent bending over backward for my family's approval. It hit me that I didn't need their validation anymore. I was done compromising my values to keep the peace. Nick continued to be a rock through all of this. He managed the fundraiser, updated the supporters, and even coordinated with an attorney who specialized in animal law to make sure I had the best advice. He also kept Luna happy and distracted, taking her on long walks and spoiling her with new toys. Claire, meanwhile, started retaliating. She spread lies to extended family, accusing me of being selfish and blowing things out of proportion. I got calls and messages from distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, some siding with Claire and others offering their support. The biggest twist came a few days later when the police called me with an update. They were considering filing criminal charges against Claire, not just for theft but also for animal cruelty, based on how she had mishandled Luna's surrender. Hearing that, I realized just how serious this had become. Update 4. The police officially charged Claire with theft and falsifying documents, a decision that escalated the entire situation. The officer handling the case said the evidence, especially the forms Claire filled out at the rescue group, was undeniable. While I wasn't surprised by the charges, seeing it all written out in an official report made it clear how serious this had become. Not long after, I received a court summons. The small claims case for emotional distress and the PI costs had been scheduled. My lawyer assured me that the paperwork from the rescue group, Lisa's testimony, and the police report were strong enough to win. Still, the process of preparing for court felt overwhelming. Nick stayed by my side, organizing documents and keeping Luna distracted with trips to the park. Word of the lawsuit and criminal charges spread quickly through the family. My parents were livid, accusing me of airing family business in public. Extended family members began calling, some to express their support and others to side with Claire. One aunt went so far as to post on Facebook, calling me vindictive and obsessed with revenge. But other relatives reached out privately to share stories of their own about Claire's manipulative behavior, which seemed to be a pattern I hadn't fully realized before. Meanwhile, Claire hired a lawyer and filed paperwork threatening to counter-sue me for defamation. Her case was flimsy, relying on claims that my social media posts had damaged her reputation. My lawyer wasn't concerned, especially since I'd avoided naming Claire directly in any of my posts. Still, it showed how far Claire was willing to go to avoid accountability. As all this unfolded, someone on Reddit reached out to me with a shocking discovery. They'd found a post from Claire on another social media platform, written just days before she surrendered Luna. In the post, Claire bragged about teaching her brother a lesson and claimed that I had always put that dog before family. She wrote about how I needed to learn priorities and implied she'd been planning this for weeks. Screenshots of the post went viral when I shared them, adding fuel to the growing public outrage. The revelations didn't stop there. A mutual friend confided that Claire's resentment toward me wasn't just about Luna. According to them, Claire had always been jealous of my career and independence. She felt overshadowed and thought I didn't deserve the success I'd worked for. The friend said Claire saw surrendering Luna as a way to knock me down a peg, which left me speechless. The media picked up the story as it gained traction online. Local news outlets reached out for interviews, and I agreed to a few. I talked about the importance of treating pets as family and shared my journey to get Luna back. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with people from all over the world offering support. Donations to the fundraiser increased, and Nick started receiving packages of dog supplies and letters addressed to Luna. In therapy, I began unpacking years of family dynamics. I'd always sought my parents' approval, bending over backward to keep the peace. But as I worked through everything, I realized I didn't need their validation anymore. It was freeing to let go of the need to prove myself to people who consistently let me down. Around this time, my brother stepped in again. He called our parents and gave them an ultimatum. If they continued to side with Claire, he would cut them off financially. My brother's financial support had helped them through tough times, so his threat carried weight. My parents backed off after that, though their silence felt more like bitterness than understanding. Claire, on the other hand, doubled down. She sent me a long, emotional letter apologizing for the stress, but still refusing to take full responsibility. She claimed her intentions had been good and accused me of ruining her life by taking the situation public. I didn't respond. The letter felt like just another attempt to shift the blame. The support from strangers, however, kept pouring in. People sent thoughtful messages, donations, and even handmade gifts for Luna. Nick set up a small corner in my living room to display the most heartfelt notes and drawings. It reminded me that while my family might be a mess, there were still good people in the world. As the court date approached, a mediator arranged a per-trial meeting to discuss a potential settlement. Claire's lawyer suggested she settle, warning her that the evidence against her was solid. But Claire refused, insisting the lawsuit would be dismissed. Her arrogance made it clear that she still didn't understand the gravity of what she'd done. Amid all this chaos, Nick confessed his feelings for me. We'd spent so much time together over the past few weeks that it felt natural, almost inevitable. We shared a quiet moment on the couch, Luna curled up between us, and for the first time in a while, things felt peaceful. The final betrayal came just days before the trial. My parents admitted they'd known about Claire's plan to rehome Luna. They hadn't thought she'd actually go through with it and believed it was harmless venting, hearing that broke something in me. I told them I would be cutting contact with both of them and Claire after the trial, regardless of the outcome. With everything in place for court, I braced myself for the next chapter. The fight wasn't over, but I was ready to see it through. Update 5. The courtroom was packed on the day of the trial. Claire arrived with her lawyer, looking composed but tense. I could feel the weight of her attempt to control the narrative as she greeted people, trying to appear like the victim in all of this. Meanwhile, I sat quietly with my lawyer, Nick by my side for moral support, and a folder filled with evidence that painted a very different picture. The trial began with Claire attempting to paint herself as a misunderstood hero. Her lawyer argued that she had acted out of concern for Luna's well-being, claiming I was too busy with work to properly care for her. Claire even shed a few tears, describing how hard it had been to make the decision to rehome Luna. But as her testimony went on, her story started to fall apart. The judge, unimpressed by the emotional theatrics, pressed her on the inconsistencies in her statements. When it was my turn, I presented photos and videos of Luna. The images showed her happy and healthy before the incident and visibly stressed in the days after I got her back. The videos of her joyful reunion with me at Lisa's house struck a chord. The judge's expression softened, and even a few people in the courtroom looked emotional. Luna's impact statement, as my lawyer called it, was undeniable proof of the harm Claire had caused, not just to me but to Luna as well. The key moment came when the rescue group's representative testified. They confirmed that Claire had lied on the surrender forms, falsely claiming ownership of Luna and providing fabricated details about her circumstances. The representative explained how the group had operated in good faith, believing Claire's story, and expressed regret for their role in the ordeal. This testimony dismantled Claire's narrative entirely. When the verdict was delivered, it was a clear win. The court ruled in my favor, awarding me financial compensation for the PI costs and emotional distress. Claire was also ordered to issue a public apology and take responsibility for her actions. The judge's words were pointed. Your actions were not only deceitful but caused undue harm to your brother and his pet, who is clearly a vital part of his life. As for the criminal case, the police investigation concluded shortly after the trial. Claire was sentenced to community service and mandatory counseling for her actions. The charges of falsifying documents and animal cruelty weren't taken lightly, and the judge in that case made it clear that her behavior was unacceptable. After the trial, I made good on my promise to cut ties with Claire and my parents. They had proven time and again that they would side with Claire no matter what. My brother, true to his word, followed through and cut off financial support to our parents. He told me later that he was done enabling their toxic dynamic and wanted to focus on his own family. Nick organized a small party to celebrate Luna's safe return and the victory in court. He invited a few close friends and neighbors who had supported me throughout the ordeal. Luna was the star of the evening, wagging her tail and soaking up all the attention. It felt like the first time in months that I could finally breathe and enjoy the moment. The story didn't end there. The media attention around the case led to an unexpected opportunity. A local organization reached out, asking if I would be interested in writing about pet advocacy. They wanted me to share my story and help raise awareness about the importance of treating pets as family. What started as a nightmare turned into a new passion project, giving me a platform to make a difference. Claire, on the other hand, found herself increasingly isolated. With no support from the family and her reputation damaged, she started reaching out to me again. She sent messages apologizing and asking for a second chance, but I ignored them. Forgiveness might come someday, but accountability had to come first. Amid all this, my relationship with Nick took a turn. After everything we'd been through, we realized how much we meant to each other. We started dating, and having him by my side brought a sense of stability I hadn't felt in a long time. Luna seemed to approve, often curling up between us during movie nights. Therapy helped me process everything and recognize this as the start of a new chapter. I'd spent so much of my life seeking approval from my family, but now I was building a life on my own terms. The support from the online community and the people around me reminded me that I wasn't alone. Luna adjusted beautifully back to her old routine. Her trust in me hadn't wavered, and every wag of her tail felt like a reminder of why I'd fought so hard. I made a heartfelt post online to thank everyone who had supported us, sharing how their kindness had made all the difference. Looking back, this ordeal taught me more than I ever expected. Luna's loyalty and love showed me the importance of setting boundaries, standing up for what's right, and valuing myself enough to walk away from toxic relationships. This wasn't just a story about a dog, it was a story about finding strength and building a family, one that truly has your back.